Today, we're diving into the absolutely tragic and honestly super complex case of Sergeant Jenna Caldwell. This is one of those stories where the line between law and crime, well, it didn't just get blurry, it completely vanished. And what it left behind was just a trail of pure destruction.
So, picture this. You've got a decorated LAPD sergeant, two powerful gang leaders, and a husband who becomes a killer. It all just blew up. This wasn't just some crime story. It was a web of obsession and betrayal that ended in an absolute bloodbath. And let me tell you, it shook everyone, from the top brass at the LAPD all the way down to the city's most dangerous criminals.
So, you have to ask, right? How on earth did one of the LAPD's most respected, most promising officers end up in a situation so messed up that her own husband ends up killing her? To even begin to understand that, we've got to rewind. We have to go back to the beginning.
See, before this whole nightmare unfolded, Sergeant Jenna Caldwell wasn't just another cop. To pretty much everyone, she was the perfect officer. A true model of discipline and courage.
Her record, spotless. This woman was sharp, she was fearless, and she had the medals to prove it. She didn't just handle high-risk assignments, she thrived on them. That adrenaline was like a drug for her. That's why she became the LAPD's top undercover operative. She could just disappear into any role, build these rock-solid cases. You could say she didn't just walk on the edge, she craved it.
And this is where you really start to see the conflict brewing inside her. On one hand, you have Sergeant Caldwell, all about duty, discipline, the law. But then, when she's undercover, she's Riley. And Riley lives in a world of danger, desire, and deceit. The scary part? She was starting to feel more at home, more herself as Riley than she ever did as Jenna.
And then you look at her life at home, which was starting to feel more and more like a cage. Her marriage to Mark, an ex-military guy who totally got the pressures of the job, used to be her safe place. But over time, that passion just cooled off. It turned into this comfortable, predictable routine. And for someone who gets a rush from chaos, safe can start to feel like a prison.
Which brings us to the assignment, the one that became her absolute point of no return. This wasn't just another case file, another target. This was a total psychological shift. It was the moment where those lines she was sworn to protect, they just started to completely disappear.
Her target? The Crimson Reapers. Now, we're not talking about some small-time street gang here. These guys were a ruthless, organized crime syndicate. They had the city in a chokehold. They were smart, they were brutal, and everyone thought they were completely untouchable.
And sitting right at the top of that whole operation was Dante Ruiz. This guy wasn't your typical thug. He was brilliant, charismatic, and dangerously sharp. He ruled his empire with a scary mix of charm and just absolute terror. The mission was to get inside his inner circle, but the real danger? Dante himself was about to become the temptation.
And Jenna's fall, man, it was slow at first and then all at once. It started as part of the job, right? A little flirting, building trust. But that quickly turned into a real, intoxicating attraction. Pretty soon, she wasn't just playing a role. She was sneaking off to his penthouse, living this whole secret life. The affair got deeper, more dangerous, until Dante decided to test her loyalty. He forced her into an encounter with his enforcer, a violent guy named Miguel Vasquez. And in that moment, the mission wasn't just compromised, it was dead.
And as if that wasn't enough pressure, internal affairs start sniffing around. They're investigating a leak inside the LAPD, thinking a cop is feeding info to the gangs. So suddenly, Jenna's got IA closing in on one side and a violent gang on the other. Her whole double life was about to get squeezed from both ends.
Okay, so while Jenna is getting pulled deeper and deeper into this dark world, her husband, Mark, is back home, and he's about to stumble onto a truth that's so much worse than just an affair. His nightmare was really just getting started. So Mark, he started noticing she was distant. But then, he started feeling sick. The exhaustion, the night sweats, losing weight. He just figured it was stress. Who wouldn't? But then, he goes to the doctor. And that's when he gets the diagnosis that just shatters his entire world, HIV positive.
And here's the thing, the most horrifying, crucial detail. Mark knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that he had been faithful. So sitting in that cold, sterile doctor's office, with his life just crumbling around him, he realized there was only one possible explanation for how this could have happened.
His trust was completely gone.
So Mark, using all his old military training, starts his own investigation. He's tracking her car, he's checking her phone records, until one night he follows her. Follows her right to a luxury high-rise, and he watches as she leaves with Dante Ruiz, the city's most notorious gang leader. It finally clicked. The betrayal wasn't just cheating, it was a death sentence.
And that discovery, that just pushed Mark right over the edge. Every lie, every secret, every single betrayal, it was all about to come together in one single violent moment.
So Mark follows Jenna again, this time to some rundown motel way out on the edge of town. He watches her go into room 12, and something just snaps. He kicks in the door, and what he finds inside isn't just his wife with her lover, Dante. Dante's violent enforcer, Miguel, is in there with them too.
And Dante, just arrogant and smug, right to the very end, looks at Mark and says, well, look who finally decided to join the party. And that was the spark that lit the fuse. In just a blur of pure rage and pain, Mark opens fire. And when the smoke cleared, Dante Ruiz and Miguel Vasquez were dead. And Jenna's entire world had just completely imploded.
After that, they were on the run. Fugitives. They're hiding out in some abandoned building, and Mark's health is just failing, fast. Then one night, he sees Jenna on a payphone. In his feverish, paranoid state, he's convinced she's calling the cops, turning him in. He confronts her, and in that dark alley, lost to his sickness and his sense of betrayal, he attacks her. He strangles the woman he once loved, the woman he just killed 2 men for.
But the story doesn't just end there in that alley. The fallout from Jenna's choices and Mark's actions, it left behind a legacy of ruin that spread way, way beyond their broken lives.
So what happened to everyone? Well, Mark was caught, sentenced to life without parole, and died in prison not long after from his illness. The IA investigation blew the lid off a huge corruption scandal in the LAPD, completely shattering public trust. And in the criminal underworld, the deaths of 2 major kingpins created a massive power vacuum, which kicked off a brutal, bloody new gang war on the streets of LA.
When you look at it all, there are no heroes in this story, just victims of their own terrible choices. And it leaves us with this really haunting question to think about. When the people who are sworn to protect us cross that line, when they become impossible to tell apart from the very criminals they're supposed to be hunting, who is actually left for us to trust?
Subscribe to the Hub of Crime Analysis.